the United States had seized an oil tanker right outside of Venezuela. And as I was saying, as much as the Trump admin tries to act like it's different from prior Republican administrations, they're doing the same thing. They cut taxes for the richest, they cut benefits for the poorest, and then they go to war for either regime change or for oil. And listen.
Well, they haven't gone to war yet.
Or they haven't gone to war yet, but they are right now posturing towards other countries, posturing towards Venezuela in a few really, really key ways.
In today's video, Adam Mockler annihilates the MAGA narrative on CNN's The Story Is. What makes this interview hit different is that Adam isn't speaking from a cable news bubble. He's speaking as someone who grew up online, talks directly to Gen Z every single day, and understands why younger Americans are so fed up with politics as usual, whether it's the Trump administration escalating tensions with Venezuela while claiming to be anti-war, or pushing tax cuts and oil interests that do nothing for regular people. Adam cuts through the spin and connects it back to real-life consequences. So let's dive in and watch how Adam Mockler shuts down the MAGA narrative on CNN's The Story Is.
For example, there was a no-fly zone a few weeks ago that was put over Venezuela that was clear escalation on behalf of the Trump admin. Since then, we have seen strikes in the Caribbean, which are questionable legally at best, due process-wise. And then from there, we now see an oil tanker being snagged off of their coast. So it seems like the admin is intentionally trying to get Maduro to flee, to force regime change, which isn't inherently bad, but it's just interesting that they claim to be the pro-peace ticket.
Yeah, and we'll see, because so far they've certainly had those. They've not done the ground war, at least not yet. Another big topic, affordability, that it seems to be dominating the national conversation for the last few years. Put up on the screen, this is, in terms of prices, people were asked in this poll from Washington Post, ABC News, are your prices going up? Groceries, 71%, utilities, 59%, healthcare, 43%. That's real people that don't necessarily follow all the politics that closely. This is impacting them every single day.
Yeah, the way that this administration speaks about the economy feels incongruent with how average Americans experience things on a day-to-day basis. I can speak from the lens of a young person who's growing up in an America where housing is just out of reach. It feels like student debt or medical debt ends up creating a negative capital situation for a lot of young people. Young people are negative in capital. So when you can't accumulate capital in the form of housing or in the form of investing, people don't feel loyal to a system. Now, I think the United States is a great country. I think it's the best country on earth. But I think when people look at Zohran Mamdani winning, for example, and they look at young socialist kids voting Zohran in, I think it's a myopic view of a broader issue, which is a system that isn't working for young people at this point.
And people don't feel loyalty to political parties because of it, because they represent them as a system. And so we see these big swings. Every time somebody gets into office, people seem to vote for the other party just because they want something to change. And then the system is so screwed up that it's not set up for them to work together. So you end up with this continuous dysfunction and continuous anger.
Yeah, it's literally a pendulum going back and forth. And I think a lot of it is spiked by algorithms. I mean, there used to be two-term presidents, like there would be 4 years back to back. But now it feels like one term, because people are so inherently anti-status quo in this current environment. And it could be due to algorithms boosting things, making people dishappy, or the actual current state of the economy, of the country. People aren't happy with it.
On the economic side, the disconnect Adam points out between official rhetoric and lived reality is backed up everywhere you look. Even as inflation rates technically cool, prices don't magically go down. Grocery prices are still up more than 20% compared to just a few years ago. Rents are at historic highs in most metro areas, and healthcare premiums continue to rise faster than wages. For young people especially, the numbers are brutal. Home prices are now roughly 6 to 7 times median income in many cities, compared to about 3 times in the 1980s. Student loan balances are back in repayment, medical debt affects roughly 1 in 3 adults under 35, and wages haven't remotely kept pace with asset inflation. That's where the loyalty problem comes in. When you grow up watching every administration promise relief and then deliver tax policy that overwhelmingly benefits the top 10%, it's not surprising people stop believing the system is designed for them. Political scientists have been warning for years that when people can't build wealth, they disengage or swing wildly between parties, not out of ideology but out of frustration. It's less about suddenly embracing socialism or nihilism and more about people reacting to a system that feels stacked against them no matter who's in charge. And the pendulum effect Adam mentions isn't just anecdotal. Voter volatility has skyrocketed over the last decade, especially among younger and independent voters. Social media algorithms amplify outrage, reward extremes, and flatten nuance, which only accelerates that back and forth cycle. When politics feels performative instead of productive, people don't vote for stability, they vote for disruption. That's really the through line here, whether it's foreign policy escalation dressed up as restraint or economic messaging that ignores day-to-day pain. The gap between what leaders say and what people experience keeps growing.
I'm pretty sure, though, President Biden is not coming back for another term, at least at this point.
Well, maybe.
So let's talk about you, because you have millions of followers, have developed an incredible range of people at a very young age. But you started at a really young age, 9 years old, playing video games. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so the YouTube channel that I currently run with 1.5 million followers, I created this when I was 9 years old. And I used to create Minecraft videos, Call of Duty videos after school, but unknowingly in the process, I was picking up these editing skills that 15 years later, 14 years later, I am now using to help spread what I think is the truth online. So when I was 9 years old, I used to make these Minecraft videos after school. And I remember when I was in 5th grade, I got kicked out of class for debating my teacher on gay marriage back in Indiana. It was the Supreme Court was right about to legalize it, and we were debating. I was probably being a little bit of a nuisance. I was in 5th grade, right? And then after I got into high school, I stopped doing YouTube, stopped doing Minecraft videos. I graduated and realized I have these skills in video editing. I can talk to people decently. And I was in Indiana at the time. The Iowa caucuses were going on 2 states over, so I emailed a bunch of cameramen. I said, is anybody able to film with me this weekend? One guy responded and said, this is his only free weekend for the next few weeks. Now he's my main cameraman a few years later. So just a random email years ago has now turned into me sitting in front of an amazing human being.
Thank you. So let's talk about how you talk to Gen Z, who get information in a different way. How do you cut through all the BS, all the noise, and get attention in an attention economy?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways I communicate. When I'm talking to Trump supporters at his rallies, for example, a lot of times I try to wrap my views in more conservative rhetoric. So I'm very pro-Ukraine. I think supporting Ukraine is very important. But if I say that Russia is bad and Ukraine is good, that doesn't click as in the same way as when I frame it like this. I'm like, listen, putting America first means funding Ukraine. Funding Ukraine is the same as putting America first because it's helping our economy, it's helping protect our ally, Ukraine, it's stopping Russia in its tracks, and it's stopping authoritarianism. So when you wrap it in the economic lens and the America first lens, that helps reach and break through.
The algorithm piece matters way more than most politicians want to admit. Social platforms are designed to reward emotional spikes, not long-term thinking. Studies from places like MIT and Stanford have shown that outrage spreads faster than factual information, and younger voters are consuming politics almost entirely through feeds optimized for conflict. When your political diet is a nonstop crisis and betrayal, the status quo feels intolerable no matter who's running it. That creates this constant churn where disappointment is baked in before any policy even has time to work. Adam's personal story actually explains why his style resonates so much. Gen Z doesn't respond to polished talking points or institutional language because they didn't grow up trusting institutions. They grew up watching banks get bailed out, student debt explode, housing disappear, and healthcare bankrupt families. So when someone shows up who understands the mechanics of online attention and can speak fluently across cultural and political lines, it cuts through in a way cable news never could. That's not accidental. It's a skill set that traditional politics is way behind on. The way he talks about reframing issues like Ukraine is also backed by research on persuasion. People are far more open to new information when it's connected to values they already hold. Polling consistently shows that support for Ukraine jumps when it's framed in terms of economic benefits, domestic manufacturing jobs, and weakening authoritarian rivals without putting US troops on the ground. Defense economists have pointed out that much of the money sent to Ukraine is actually spent in the US, propping up American factories and supply chains. That's not spin. That's literally how the funding works. And that same logic applies to young voters across the board. When people feel locked out of housing, wealth, and stability, abstract ideology doesn't move them. Material reality does. Gen Z swings politically not because they're confused or unserious, but because they're hyper-aware that the system isn't delivering for them.
And you can use that same framework to young people. I mean, when you're talking to young people, I won't communicate in the same way that I would like a 55-year-old Trump supporter. I generally try to wrap things in our lived experiences. Young people during our formative years have seen Trump over and over say the craziest, wildest stuff imaginable. So I try to frame it through that political framework. And I think overall, it's just understanding that Gen Zers, a lot of young people feel nihilistic. It's breaking through that both sidesism that you were talking about, where people think both sides are bad. You got to cut through the nihilism, and that's my main advice.
And have some fun too, right?
Have some fun.
I mean, so much stuff is boring.
Yeah.
And part of the reason you're able to do this is try to make it fun.
Yeah, there's a few key things that I try to bring when I'm speaking to people, and it's either being fun, attention grabby, or not so finger waggy. I'm telling you, young people do not like a Democratic Party that wags the finger, that tells you not to behave this way, that tries to get all up.
Yeah, because Trump sometimes semes more fun than a lot of Democrats.
And that's not
right?
a good thing. Yeah, Trump does not want to be the fun guy. He should not be the fun guy. Yeah.
but that's been part of his appeal over the years, and so we'll see. Do you think, is there a favorite Gen Z candidate, you think?
A favorite Gen Z candidate, like a candidate
that Gen Z likes of maybe the 2028 crew.
I mean, we're in the great state of California right now. I believe Newsom is the front runner according to every single poll. Yeah.
For you too?
Yeah, for Gen Zers, of course. He's out there dominating attention. Yeah. He's out there dominating the media environment and understanding how to break through in a time when people feel nihilistic, and that's important.
Adam Mockler, thank you so much. Hopefully first of many appearances here.
First of many.
Really appreciate it. You're watching The Story Is.
What Adam's getting at really lines up with what the data shows about Gen Z and younger millennials. This generation came of age during nonstop political chaos, economic shocks, and algorithm-driven outrage. So their default setting isn't optimism, it's skepticism. Pew and Gallup polling consistently show Gen Z has the lowest trust in government, media, and even capitalism itself compared to older generations. When you grow up watching school shootings, climate disasters, student debt balloon, rent double, and politicians yell at each other on cable news without fixing much, it's not surprising that a lot of young people check out or fall into that both sides are bad mindset. That's why the way politics is communicated matters as much as the substance. Studies on political persuasion show younger audiences shut down fast when messaging feels preachy or moralizing. Finger-wagging doesn't mobilize people who already feel powerless. It just reinforces the idea that politics is about scolding rather than solving problems. Meanwhile, humor, authenticity, and relatability actually increase message retention, especially on short-form platforms like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels, where Gen Z gets most of their political information. Trump's appeal to younger audiences has never really been about policy, it's about spectacle. Researchers who study digital media have pointed out that Trump mastered meme culture long before most politicians understood it. He's unpredictable, he's provocative, and that reads as entertaining in an attention economy, even to people who don't like him. The problem for Democrats is that seriousness without accessibility just looks boring online, and boring loses every time against chaos in an algorithmic environment. That's also why candidates who understand modern media tend to break through more with younger voters. Gavin Newsom's rise in Gen Z polling isn't happening because young people suddenly love establishment politics. It's because he shows up where attention actually lives. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.